Hello everyone, thank you for watching Edupedia World videos. So in this video we'll learn about archiving of objects. Okay, so we'll learn the archiving strategy of certain important archiving objects like IDOCs, the change documents, the DB table, okay, so etc. I have split this video into two parts, part 4a and the other is part 4b. Okay, so we'll start with archiving IDOCs. We can restrict the growth of IDOC tables by ensuring the archivability of the IDOC status using the transaction WE47. The IDOC data is archived using archiving object IDOC. Okay, so coming to IDOC tables, we have three tables: the control table, the IDOC control table, the status, and the actual data tables. Okay, so we have EDIDC, EDIDS, and EDI40 conventionally. These are the conventional IDOC tables: the control or the header table, the status, and the actual data table. Okay, so in IDOCs, they are used for communication between two systems. Okay, so these IDOC tables, so after go live, once the production system runs for a couple of years, the IDOC tables become eventually very large in size. Okay, so we need to go for an option like either we have to purge off the data, or the other option is we have to do some archiving. Okay, now this WE47T code is used to change the status of IDOCs. Okay, so you can check your IDOC status as well as you can change it using WE47T code. And the archiving object for IDOC is IDOC. Okay, it is IDOC. Now, what is the recommendation from SAP? It says like archiving completed IDOCs such as outgoing IDOCs with status 12, that is dispatch OK, or the incoming IDOCs with status 53 after a relatively short residence time, 1 week after processing has been completed. So we have IDOCs in so many status. Okay, so SAP says like you archive the objects. Okay, for outgoing it is like status is 12, they are dispatched OK, means your system has sent out the IDOC, okay, and it has also got a written receipt that the IDOC was successfully posted. And the incoming IDOCs, so the IDOC has come into the system and it's already posted successfully. It has status 53. So we have two IDOCs. Outgoing it is 12 months, it is successful, and incoming 53 it is successful. So SAP says like archive this 12 and 53 status IDOCs after 1 week. 1 week is good enough. Okay, because once the IDOC has been dispatched okay, or it's posted, the job is over. But we need 1 week of time, okay, if required, to do some documentation. Okay, so the follow-on documents are then created and the IDOC is no longer required. Okay, so post that all the documents are created, okay, and the IDOC is not required anymore in the system. Entries that still have to be processed, such as IDOC that contain errors, can only be archived if they have been corrected. Alternatively, you can check if the IDOC is still required and then delete it. It is also possible to archive IDOC separately according to message type. However, this type of differentiation is generally not necessary. Now, we have spoken about the successfully outgoing and successfully incoming ones, 12 and 53. Now we have another set of IDOCs right in the system which are in error status or intermediate status. So the intermediate ones, they will eventually be processed. Coming to the error ones, you will need to correct it, okay, to either move it into 12 or 53 status, or if you create a new IDOC for the error one, just go and delete the error one. You have two options. Okay, you correct it, the same IDOC you correct it so that it takes 12 or 53, whatever it is, and the other option is you create a new one for that error IDOC and you delete that error IDOC. Okay, so and SAP also says it is possible to archive IDOCs according to the message types also. Okay, so depending upon the message type, say like this message type will archive in 30 days, this particular message type will archive in 60 days. So you can follow that strategy also. Okay, see the retention time, what IDOCs you want to archive, it is completely dependent upon your business. SAP doesn't say like these IDOCs you have to archive and you have to archive after 1 week. It is just a recommendation from SAP, but however, whether you go for archiving or not for IDOCs, the retention time, okay, and what types of IDOCs are archived, okay, and there also you can differentiate like this message type will keep in the system for 90 days, this particular message type will just purge off in 10 days, okay, so that's completely dependent upon the client business requirements. Okay, now for the processing of outgoing IDOCs, you can determine whether the receiving system sends a status message or not when it receives the IDOC. An outgoing IDOC has status 03, data passed to port OK. As soon as the receiving system sends a status message, the status of the IDOC changes. If the IDOC has been processed successfully, the status is 12. If the receiving system does not send a status message, the IDOC continues to have status 03. Remember to also archive these IDOCs. Okay, now outgoing, the IDOC has been sent out, okay, and you got a written receipt, so status is 12. However, some cases the IDOC is sent out successfully, but the target system will not send a written receipt. Okay, so in that case the IDOC will remain in status 03. So we have an exception condition like when we don't expect a written receipt from the target system, the IDOC continues to be in 03. So even the 03 status IDOCs are also potential candidates for archiving along with 12. Okay, so when there is a confirmation that we will not get any written receipt from the target system, we can archive this 03 status IDOCs also. Okay, so about IDOCs, IDOC is the archiving object for IDOCs. Okay, so that should be known, well known. Next thing, WE47T code, where you can view and change the status of the IDOCs. Okay, next thing, the recommendation from SAP, archive successful ones after 1 week of time, 12, 53 incoming. Okay, and exception cases 03 also for outgoing IDOCs. Okay, and all the other ones, okay, you can either archive the error ones, you can delete them. Okay, so again it's completely the depends upon the client. Okay, so generally successful ones are archived in projects and the error ones are just purged off. Okay, sometimes they archive the error ones also if they think it's important. Okay, otherwise they'll just keep it in the system for 3 months to 6 months and they just purge it off, the errored IDOCs. Okay, so this is about archiving of IDOCs. Now the next one, the archiving object BC_DB logs, the table change protocols. This is an interesting table. Okay, so the changes to database tables are lodged in table DB tab log. Now we make changes to database tables. Okay, so even these changes are captured in a different table known as DB tab log. This is only possible for tables for which the table logging is switched on and in the technical properties in the data dictionary. Okay, so this can be done only when in SE11, okay, in the ABAP dictionary, if you activate table logging for that particular table, the logging is carried out record by record. For every change of operation, the before image of the data recorded to be changed is written to the log table. Besides the changed data record itself, a log record also contains information about the environment in which the change was made, such as the date and time of the change, the log date and log time, the name of the change table, the tab name, the name of the application server, the host name on which the change was made, the username, the transaction code, the program name, and the logon language. What is this DB tab log table? It captures all the changes made to the table. Okay, so So this is only possible for tables for which table logging is switched on in the technical properties in the data dictionary. Okay, so in S11, if you activate this logging of tables, okay, so then every change made to the table is captured in this DB tab log table. Okay, now what all information is recorded? Okay, the before image and what is the change done. So apart from this, you have a good tracking information about when the change was made, what is the change table name, which user changed it, on which application server of SAP system the change was made, the transaction code, the program name, the logon language, etc, etc. Okay, so all this information is captured in the DB tab log table. In a production system, this logging should be generally switched on only for tags and customizing tables, and the data volume produced through these logs is not significant. Existing logs can be displayed with transaction SCU3. Okay, now when we talk about the production system, okay, so it is not advised to switch on this table logging for all the tables, only for critical tables like the tax tables and the customizing tables. Okay, this table logging is switched on, and we should also ensure that the amount of the change, okay, the changes recorded in this DB tab log table is kept optimal. Okay, because if this table increases in size, then all the other tables, when the change is made to the table and it's written to this table, okay, the performance will be impacted. Okay, so it makes your system down. So first thing is like keep less tables, okay, to be lodged. Second option is make sure like whatever tables you are selected for this table lodging, they generate less changes. Okay, so less changes are recorded in the DB tab log table. Otherwise, this table will increase in size and eventually all the tables accessing this table, okay, so the performance will slow down for those tables also along with this table. Okay, so generally for the tags and customizing tables, the table logging is switched on, and this logging information is you can view it using SCU3 T code. Now, for tables that hold transactional data, this logging is not necessary because in these cases all changes are captured in the change documents. Only in some cases, such as for those documents for which no change documents are created, you may have to switch on table logging. To avoid unnecessary growth of DB tab log, you should only switch on logging for those specific tables. Okay, so for this tags and customizing tables, we need to switch on table logging. For all the other transactional data tables, this table logging need not be activated. Okay, because for those tables the change documents are generated. Okay, so we have the change documents, so whatever changes are made to this transactional data tables, okay, so the changes are automatically captured in the change logs. We need not explicitly again log the changes in this DB tab log table. Now, prevention. If many changes are made to the table and the logging is switched on, the table DB tab log can get very large. If this is the case, it should first be checked if logging is really necessary for the table in question or whether it can be switched off. Okay, so if too much changes are recorded in the DB tab log table, this table will become very huge. So first thing, like whether the logging you have activated for this table is really required or not. If it's not necessary, please switch it off. The table changes are lodged if the following criteria apply. The log data changes indicator is selected in the technical settings of S11 or 13, and the logging is activated in the parameter rec client in the system parameter client RZ12. Okay, so for table level you activate it via S11 or S13, and at the client level you activate it using the parameter rec/client. Okay, the individual settings can be changed in the transaction S11 by deactivating the log data changes indicator. Usually, this step is recommended for customer defined tables Y and C tables. For all other tables, the reactivation of the logging must be discussed, checked and audited by the business groups and auditors. So for your customizing tables, okay, you can, the customer defined tables like the Y and Z tables. Okay, the table logging need not be activated for all other tables. Okay, so you have to thoroughly check with the client, okay, and their legal requirements, okay, and then only deactivate it. To determine which table does have the logging indicator, transaction SE11 can be used for the table DD09L. If the field prot or call has the value X, then the table logging is active. Okay. Now we have one more table, okay, where this is very useful table DD09L, where you can just go to SA16 and browse it. Okay, and for all the tables, okay, with this field prot or call, if this particular field has value X, then for all those tables the table logging is activated. Okay, so that's what. First thing is we check if it's active or not in SE11 or SE13. Okay, and across the client it can be activated using the parameter trick/client. Now we have one more table, okay, DD09L, an excellent table where you can just check it in SE16, okay, and you will come to know for what all tables in your system this table logging is active or not. Now when we talk about archiving, the change logs can be archived by using the archived object bc_db logs. Okay. Now for idocs, the archiving object is idoc. Similarly, for this db tab log table, the archiving object is bc_db logs. The archiving object bc_db logs is a cross-client object, which means that all logs recorded are archived independently of the client in which the change lodged in the table db tab log was initiated. And this archiving object is cross-client. Okay. So say like you have activated some table logging in a particular client or some table and the changes are made in only one client, but this, when you initiate archiving through bc_db logs object, the archiving is done system wide. Okay, it's cross client. Okay, so once you start archiving using this object, the data in all the clients of this table is archived. Since the archiving object is cross client, we only have to schedule an archiving run in one client and not in every client in which the customizing settings have been configured. Okay, because this object is cross client, you have to schedule only one archiving job. Okay, we need not schedule multiple archiving jobs and multiple clients. Now, what is the recommendation from SAP? It is recommended to regularly archive the customizing changes logs, not the Z table logs, after a residence time of 3 to 6 months for all countries, according to SAP best practices. It is not possible to split DB logs by countries or companies, so the highest retention time should be taken as 10 years. Now, SAP already says like, please don't archive your tables, the Y and Z tables. Okay, so archive the important tables, okay, and keep the retention time for archiving as 3 to 6 months. Okay, so after 3 to 6 months, you please start archiving the old date. Whatever data is older than 3 or 6 months, whatever you choose a value between 3 to 6 months, you archive it. Okay, and because this, table, this archiving object archives the data in this table cross client. Okay, and you can't filter it, like you can archive only according to these companies you can archive or these countries you can archive. There is no such option to choose. Okay, and so you keep the data, that archive data for 10 years. Okay, so because these tax tables, okay, and other critical tables, when it comes to auditing, okay, we will want to check the whatever changes are made. Okay, because when the government asks, the auditors, they ask for tax, they pull for the last, they ask like, give me last 10 years of data or give me last 15 years of data, whatever they can ask. Okay, so this archiving is done cross-client, and further you don't have any filters also, like for this country we want to archive or this particular company we want to archive. It's generally archived and it's done in all clients simultaneously. Okay, so we are archiving after 3 to 6 months. That is good. So after 3 to 6 months also we have the archive data, but the retention period of that archiving data, SAP says like put it at least for 10 years. Okay, because if later some point of time you want to know like what changes were done, okay, then it's very important that we will have to retrieve the archive data and check it. So that's why the retention period should be kept as 10 years. And the following functions can be used to access the archive data. First one is the transaction SCU3. SCU3 can be used to check the change logs in this table as well as the archived data. The next one is the read program and SARA as usual. In last video we have learned like how to access archived IDOCs. So there also we have read that from the read program in SARA you can get the information. So here also from the read program in the SARA decode you can get the information of this archived object. And the other one is the SAP archive information system. Okay, so just brushing up what we have learned about this DB tab log table. Once we activate this table logging via SE11 or SE13 for any table, so that information is captured in DB tab log table. This is a very important table. Okay, it shows you like what is the data, the before image, the old value, okay, and the new value. Okay, what table is archived, at what date, what time, the table name, okay, then on which application server the change was made, which user changed it, through which P code, program, and even the logon language. Okay, because if any problem occurs, it's very important that one will go and refer, like, oh, why this value was changed in the table. That's very critical. For some critical tables we should know. Okay, we do something, we get wrong results, okay, then we want to troubleshoot where the problem is. So in such cases we will go and check in the DB tab log table. If the logging is activated for that particular table, we'll go and check like what change is made, who made the change, when it was made. So all this information we can get. So that's why DB tab log table is very important. So the second thing is SAP says don't activate this for all the tables, especially for Y and Z tables. Please do not activate it. Okay, you can activate it for other tables like the tax tables and the customizing tables. Okay, and even if you activate it, say like if after activation the changes are generated at a large rate, okay, for that table, then please go and check if the table logging is really necessary. If it's not really necessary, then please switch off. Okay, because if this DB tab log table will become huge in size, you will see various performance problems. Okay, now you can activate logging at table level via SE11 or SE13 from the technical settings, or client wide you can activate this logging using rec/client parameter. Okay, now you can view the logs using the transaction SCU3. Okay, now the next thing is we have one more important table, TD09L. Okay, so this table you can just check in SE16. If you view this table, it will give you the list of tables. Okay, and using this field prot o call, if that particular field has value X, then for all those tables having this field X, for those tables the table logging is active. Okay, so you can have a glance in your system like that for which tables the table logging is activated. Now the archiving object for this DB tab log table is BC_DB logs. This object is a cross client. Okay, so we have to schedule only one archive job. And the other important thing is archiving can be initiated after 3 to 6 months. Okay, and the retention period of the archive data is also important. Okay, so SAP says please keep it for 10 years. Now, see, just to reduce the data in the database, okay, to improve the performance, we go for archiving. So we purge the data from the database and we put it on archiving devices. Okay, but the storage cost for these archiving devices also plays an important role. Just, say like if your system is running for 50 years, you can't, keep just archive, the information after 1 year and place it in the archiving devices. Okay, so there is a limit also. The retention time for the data to be kept on archiving devices is also important. Okay, so archiving you do after certain period of time from your system. Post archiving, whatever data is archived and kept on the archived devices, so that will also have some retention time. Okay, so you generally take it as 10 years, 15 years, 5 years. Again, it's a completely dependent upon the client requirements. Okay, so for this DB time log table, you should at least keep it for 10 years. Okay, now why we are talking about the retention time of the data kept on the archive devices? You just can't increase the storage for the archive devices, because there also cost. If you talk about storage, okay, you have to, that incurs a lot of cost to the client. Okay, so you just can't purge the data from the database and dump it onto the archiving devices and keep it for 50 years and 100 years. Okay, in that case you will have to incur so much cost for storage on the archive devices. So that's why there also we keep some retention time. So after that retention time also, the data from the which is there on the archive devices also purged off. Okay, so for this table we archive it. SAP says please archive the data from the database after 3 to 6 months and please keep it on the storage device. Okay, the retention time on the archive devices can be kept for 10 years. Now, what are the following functions to view the access archive data? SEU3, then the read program in the SARA decode, and the SAP archive information system. Okay, so this video 4A, okay, we have started with archiving IDOCs. Okay, IDOC is the object, outgoing, incoming, successful ones 1253 are archived. Okay, for the errored ones, please correct it or delete it, and even 03 and outgoing ones also can be archived. Okay, and the object name is IDOC, and WE47T code to view and change the status of IDOCs. The next one is the DB tab log table. The changes made to the tables are recorded in this table. Okay, and the archiving object is BC_DB logs. Okay, so you can just have a look at this table in SA16. Okay, it will give you a very good information about the changes which are made to the table, any table, okay, which is lodged for activation. And SEU3, you can check the logs, and you can activate it via SE11 or SE13, and client wide you can activate it via rec/client parameter. Okay, and this DD09L table, okay, to check like what all tables are selected for lodging. Then this object is cross client, so we schedule only one archiving job, and for reading the archive data you use SEU3 or the read program, the SARA decode in the SAP archive information system. Okay, so in the next video 4B, archiving objects 4B, this is 4A. Okay, in the next video we learn about archiving of 2 more objects. Okay, so these 4 objects are very important. Okay, these are the potential candidates for archiving, so that's why I am presenting only 4 objects here. However, you can archive other objects also, but I am not going to that much depth. Okay, so I have picked up 4 important archive objects. Okay, and this is the first video, so please watch the next video as well, the archiving objects part 4B. Okay, thank you.